Welcome to this exploration of a profound meeting point between Eastern and Western understandings of the mind. The Avijjāpaccayā Sutta from the Pali Canon and Carl Jung's Depth Psychology. This discourse, found in the Samyutta Nikaya 12.35, is one of the clearest and most powerful presentations of the Buddhist concept of dependent origination or Paccaya. It lays out the chain of causes and conditions that lead to suffering, beginning with avijja, ignorance. But what is ignorance in this context? And how can we understand it through the psychological lens Carl Jung gave us, an understanding of the psyche rooted in the unconscious, in shadow, and in the longing for wholeness? Let us begin. The Buddha starts the sutta by saying, "From ignorance as a requisite condition come fabrications. From fabrications, consciousness. From consciousness, name and form, and so on, until we arrive at aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, and despair." This chain, 12 links in total, shows us that suffering does not appear randomly. It is conditioned, but not by fate, not by gods, and not by punishment. It is conditioned by a process that begins with not seeing, not knowing, not understanding. This is avijja. Ignorance in the Buddhist context is not simply lack of intellectual knowledge. It is a deep misperception of reality. It is the failure to understand the Four Noble Truths. It is the belief in a permanent, unchanging self. It is attachment to identity, to craving, and to fear. In Jungian terms, we might say that ignorance is the refusal to see the unconscious. It is the repression of shadow. It is the denial of parts of the psyche that we do not wish to confront. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This quote echoes the Buddha's teaching perfectly. In both systems, the ignorance of one's true nature, the lack of integration between consciousness and unconsciousness, leads to suffering. Jung called this the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. The Buddha called it the end of dukkha, the cessation of suffering through insight. Let us now look at the chain itself. From ignorance come fabrications, soccer. These are volitional formations, mental patterns rooted in conditioning. They are our habitual ways of thinking, reacting, and constructing meaning. In Jungian psychology, these could be seen as complexes, unconscious patterns formed through trauma, early experience, and archetypal energy. These complexes drive behavior beneath awareness. They shape perception, and they create distortion. They are the unseen architects of personality. But they arise from ignorance, the refusal to see the deeper truth. From fabrications comes consciousness, via. Here, the mind takes shape. Consciousness arises in dependence on conditions, not as a fixed soul, but as a momentary awareness, dependent on the previous karmic momentum. In Jung's terms, we might think of this as the ego structure emerging out of the dynamic field of the psyche. Consciousness is always relative. It is always partial. It does not know the whole. And yet, we mistake it for the whole. This is another layer of avijja. Then comes name and form, namarupa. This is the psychophysical organism, mind and body, concept and shape. It is how consciousness experiences reality, through duality, through symbol, through sensation. In Jungian thought, this is the domain of projections. The world we see is not just the world. It is a reflection of our inner state. We impose meaning through myth, through narrative, through archetype. Every man carries within him the eternal image of woman, Jung writes. Not the image of this or that particular woman, but a definite feminine image. This is the anima, projected onto others. Namarupa is the theater in which projection plays. From name and form arise the six sense bases, sayatana, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. These are the doors through which experience flows. Then comes contact, phassa, the meeting of sense organ, sense object, and consciousness. Then feeling, vedana, the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral tone that arises. Then craving, ta, the grasping toward pleasure or the aversion to pain. Craving arises from unawareness, from not seeing clearly that all things are impermanent, that no experience can truly satisfy. Craving leads to clinging, upadana, the solidifying of desire, into identity. This is mine. This is me. This is what I need. Then comes becoming, bhava, the karmic momentum that sets the stage for rebirth. Then birth, jati, the arising of a new sense of self. And then the inevitable, aging and death. With all their sorrow, lamentation, and despair. This is the human condition, laid bare, not as punishment, but as process. What does Jung have to say here? He says that suffering is the consequence of a one-sided development of consciousness, that we suffer because we are cut off from parts of ourselves, that the path forward is not escape, but integration. The Buddha agrees. He does not tell us to annihilate the self. He tells us to see through its illusion. He tells us to observe the process with mindfulness. And as we do, ignorance begins to fade. And when ignorance fades, the entire chain begins to unravel. This is the miracle of the Dhamma. The cessation of avijja brings the cessation of sakkara. The cessation of sakkara brings the cessation of vaya, and so on, until there is no more clinging, no more becoming, no more suffering. This is freedom. The Buddha warns us not to get caught in speculative questions. Who craves? Whose suffering is this? These questions are rooted in the very ignorance we are trying to uproot. Instead, he says, look directly. Watch the arising and ceasing. Know for yourself what is conditioned and what is not. Jung, too, reminds us not to define ourselves by static labels. I am not what happened to me, he says. I am what I choose to become. Both the Avijjāpaccayā Sutta and Jung's psychology point to the same truth, that suffering is a process, and so is freedom. That what is unconscious can be made conscious. That what is bound can be liberated. And that the path to truth begins, not with belief, but with seeing clearly, directly, courageously. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. If this teaching resonates with you, consider subscribing for more content at the intersection of psychology, spirituality, and myth. Until next time, may your path be clear and your heart be open.